Hello everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast. As part of this series, this audio podcast series, the Molecular Storm Gauge v.3. This is an audio podcast aligned to pediatric nephrology and coping in young people with chronic kidney disease or CKD. This is an audio podcast aligned to a Ztorm Robotics siege and aligned to another Ztorm Robotics production. In this audio podcast, there will be an overview in and around the implications for practice in context of the research that had retrospectively taken place, and then some overall conclusions. So, in context of the implications for practice, young people with CKD 4 and 5 may not cope as well as those with earlier stage CKD due to the limitations associated with disease progression. So, for example, physical activity, for example, and the psychological approach to coping proposes or prompts that young people with CKD may need to adjust both cognitive and social aspects of their lives to meet challenges of living with chronic illness, or illnesses. There's works that's been documented by the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health in 2011 in around this. The themes derived in this research can prompt researchers, or when the authors had documented that can prompt investigators or researchers to potentially develop a coping score for a young CKD population. So, in additionally, it had been documented in this works that additionally it would be advantageous to look at how young people with CKD have developed their sort of own coping strategies through it would be advantageous to look at how young people with CKD sort of develop coping strategies through a what's been documented or referred to as a longitudinal study, to provide a pathway for development of a formal coping framework. And the investigation highlights that some of the insights and experiences of young people with CKD, and the findings also sort of prompt and allow health professionals in pediatrics or pediatric nephrology to develop a guideline to complement clinical practice and strengthen coping strategies for young people with CKD. Future prospective investigations on coping should focus on perceptions of coping also from parents and guardians. And there's works by Folkman and Moskowitz sort of retrospectively in 2000 that have highlighted some bases in around this as well, some aspects in around this, and in around the conclusions. So for young people with CKD, coping strategies can be impaired by normal daily living activities, and this in turn can reduce sort of physical aspects in around physical activity and enjoyment of close friendships, contentment with family, and performance in school or work. And if young people with CKD have support to adopt more positive coping-based strategies, this may also enable a smoother transition, sort of interplay between pediatric renal care to adult renal services, where young people are required to become more autonomous, and prospective investigations should thus adopt a similar, where the authors have documented that prospective investigations or studies should thus adopt similar qualitative methodology approach, but also sort of seek opportunities to encourage greater participation for this population. So in this context, the authors would like to in this works, the authors have highlighted several references, references or citations, and as in previous audio podcasts, there will be some resources highlight some resources in the descriptive aspects on social media. So any listeners or those checking out the sort of audio podcasts, etc., can seek out some of the resources resources in around this research and this works. The In line to that as well, this works was once again in line to pediatric nephrology and coping in young people with chronic kidney disease and CKD. This draws this audio podcast to a close, and once again there will be an overview of this audio podcast on social media. So this has been an audio podcast aligned to the molecular storm gauge v.3. This has been another Ztorm Robotics production, and this has been an audio podcast aligned to a Ztorm Robotics siege, and this audio podcast highlights in around this research, in around sort of the research sort of retrospectively highlights some aspects in around the implications for practice and some conclusions. So thank you for tuning in on this series, and feel free to check out the sort of overview in context of the sort of references and resources as well. Okay, thank you.